Welcome everybody to Tales from the Tackle Shop. My name is Andy Page, and as always my co-host is Alex Bates. Evening Alex, how are you?
Evening Andy, not too bad mate, not too bad. Had a fairly busy week with the weather. It's still holding out. We haven't had no frost yet, so there's still plenty of hangers on the banks, which is good for the trade. Been to a diver trade show this week, so I've seen some lovely new kit that's coming out soon. Had a decent day's fishing at March yesterday, and I think we'll come on to that a bit later. And yeah, so not too bad really, mate. How about you? Have you had a good week?
Oh no, I've had a nightmare, fella. I've had proper man flu this week. Like last Monday, remember I said I'm going to sniff a lot. Well, this week's been a disaster. Yeah. I've not been at work. I've not fished at all. Not even thought about fishing. It's been too cold. But I think it's age related, I think. Yeah. But I must mention one thing. I did pop out for a couple of hours Saturday evening. It was Ray Field's birthday, his 70th birthday, and he had a little bash at the GER. So happy birthday to Raymond Field. And that leads me on beautifully that we're going to have his son Andrew Field, who's the float maker, on the show next week. And Andrew's not just a good float maker, but he's a fantastic rud and barbel angler, so we shall have him on, so that'll be great. One thing I must mention to you though, I took the lads today to bounce because it's half term, so they needed something to do. So I had an 8-year-old and a 15-year-old at bounce, and I used it as an excuse to drop into Shelton's on the way home, because we did hear a rumour about a month ago that Shelton's were closing down, and sadly that rumour's true. So I spent a very it was a strange half an hour in Shelton's talking to Richard and looking at a massive empty shop. Now I remember many years ago with I think it was Bob and Kathy, who used to have the shop just across the way from the new shop, and Shelton's has been a bit of an institution really, so that was a bit of an eye-opener today, going in there and seeing that it was virtually empty. So I think some point in the near future we need to have a good chat about tackle shops, the threat to tackle shops with all the online stuff, and really open everyone's eyes to the fact that they do need to support their local tackle shop.
Yes, definitely, mate. Definitely. Yeah. Interesting subject, I think.
Well, I think it's something we need to broach, because what happens if all the tackle shops shut? Where do people get their maggots, worms from? And, local information. It's people have got to open their eyes a little bit here and think, don't save five quid on a reel, go in and support your local tackle shop.
Yeah, you can't get the information offline like you can in the local tackle shop, can you? It's definitely for me, you always went to your local tackle shop to get your maggots and where's fishing and need to do this, you need to do that, and you just can't beat that information that the local shop gives you, really, can you?
No, and once it's gone, it's gone. So I think, I think we need to tap into that in the next few weeks or so. Anyway, less of the doom and gloom. We have another fantastic guest on tonight. So somewhere out in the ether, Kye Jerrom, you're there somewhere?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, we appreciate it. Thanks for giving up your time. So thank you very much for coming on. Now, Kye, I know a bit about you because we bumped into each other last year down one of the side drains of the 40-foot, which we may or may not get onto later. But you've got a very interesting history because you're a match angler and also you work for the Environment Agency. So I think it would be really cool for listeners, if you could just give us a brief background of your fishing background and how you got into a career in fishing as well.
Okay, yeah, I'll try and keep it brief because it's quite a long one. So it's interesting, people call me young Kye and stuff, but I've been around for years. So I think my match fishing career started about a year after I got interested in fishing. Ultimately, I started fishing probably when I was about 7. I used to go with the lads at the end of the road. And then that sort of fizzled out. My parents never fished, so they never really took me fishing. And then later on, I sort of refocused back into fishing. I lived in Huntingdon, so we used to go to Hertford Church on the Ouse. And there were a lot of people that used to fish there. It was a really popular bit of river and it fished really well. And I remember after school, I used to cycle down there. And I remember one day meeting Rob Lincoln from Hotrods and watched him fish an evening match. And then all the local lads were there. And I did that for the next 6 weeks and we got talking. And I used to do that. I used to cycle around. And so my match fishing career almost started instant. I almost was learning too quick for my own fishing. And that was how it started, really. I joined a local club, Brampton Angling Society, and I did a little bit with hot rods as well, just walking along. Went with anglers like Lindsay Naylor and Steve Welford. Bob Lincoln used to drive me around. I worked in a tackle shop. Armour Jawad was there. I spent more time in the tackle shop than I did at school, which led to pretty poor sixth form results. And then eventually, I really hit it hard. I joined a local team, Stan Jays. We fished for about 5 years. That was brilliant. We won a few things, and that really got me going. And then eventually, I fished for my dream team, Browning Hotrods, who I fish with now. They're a brilliant bunch, and I've known most of them for the best part of 25 years, so my whole angling career, which is really good. And I love it. We fish at a really high level. A great bunch of lads, really knowledgeable. We've got some brilliant anglers in the team. And my fishing is, I've got everything that I have learned. I owe that to hot rods, really, and the people that have helped me when I was a bit younger. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting and long career for someone called young Kye.
Well, yeah, well, that's fantastic. But also, you work for the Environment Agency. So can you give us a very brief background how you managed to get into that as a career path?
Yeah, so fishing and rivers and the outdoors has always been in my blood. And I remember it vividly. People ask me this quite often. I was about 14 and I was reading the local Hunts Post. And there was an advert for a job, a water guardian. And at the time, I knew nothing. Most 14-year-olds, they know nothing about what they want to do. And I thought, wow, this is like working with rivers, working with fish, protecting the environment. This is what I want to do. But I knew nothing about it really. And I was miles away from getting a job, at least 2 or 3 years. And I knew that I wanted to work. I didn't really want to stay in education. So I literally phoned up my local fisheries team, the team leader there, and I met him at Brampton, at the offices in Brampton, which is where I work now. And actually, he's my boss now. And I literally wanted to know what I needed to do. How do I start my career? And where can I end up with it? So he basically said, they're dead man's shoes, but if you're into fish, they're a great job. He told me that I needed a degree, really, to progress fishery, which really wasn't what I wanted to hear because I didn't want to stay at school. I didn't really even want to go through sixth form. I was working in the local tackle shop. I loved going out with my mates and spending money, and staying in education didn't really fit with me. But that's what I did. So I did my GCSEs. I did some A levels. So I did biology, English, and geography. And then I went to the local university. So everything was minimal. You can see here, my investment was minimal. So I went to a university in Cambridge so I could commute. I could still work at the local tackle shop. And then eventually I left there with a degree in environmental biology. And I was quite keen, actually. I was probably pretty switched on for a young lad then, but I didn't want to do anything fisheries specific because I'd already been told that there weren't a huge amount of fisheries jobs. So I thought I'll keep it fairly open. And then I left there and I carried on working actually in the shop in Peterborough, a tackle shop called Webb's in Peterborough, which was a really good sort of match fishing based shop there. And then eventually I started looking for proper jobs, and my mum was saying to me, come on, you need an actual career. And I applied for a 3-month contract with the Environment Agency as a biologist. I managed to blag it in the interview and explain and convince them that I was a biologist and not into fish. And really my luck sort of carried on from there. So the day I started that 3-month contract, one of the guys in the fisheries team had some health issues and he was going to move on to a different team. And I'd already made it obvious that I was fishing and fish and wanted a fisheries role. And basically I spent 3 months doing some biology and some fisheries. And wow, we were netting the ELUs for 2 weeks, which is about as physical as it can get. So they knew that I wanted to do it, and I was only a small lad, I still am now, and they knew that I'd put my back into it. And eventually I got a job, and it went on from there. I've worked for 3 years in the survey team, which is brilliant. I had the best 3 years of my life surveying all the rivers throughout the Great Ouse. And now I'm a fisheries specialist for the on the whole of the Great Ouse catchment. There aren't many of us nationally, and I have a lot of input into various different projects, and basically fishing and fisheries is at the heart of that. And I think I'm unique to most fisheries specialists because most are, they're biologists or fisheries specialists at heart. But I'm actually fishing and fisheries is my heart. That's what drives me. And living in the fens and the fisheries that we've got here are really unique. I'm dealing with eels. Most fisheries specialists deal with salmon, really glamorous fish like trout. but I love it, and that's what's driven me. So I'm a fisheries ecologist by nature, so I study fish in their habitat, and I use that to improve them, which ultimately improves my sport. So that's sort of full circle for me.
Well, I was just listening to what you were saying, and I don't know if you're aware that I'm actually a school teacher for a long, long time. And one of the things we struggle with boys in particular is getting them interested in looking at careers when they're actually sort of 14, 15. And it's interesting that you knew what you wanted to do, and you were driven by knowing what you wanted to do, and you basically set your stall out. I need to get these GCSEs, I need to get these A-levels, I need to get to this place to do this degree, which will then put me in a position to then do what I really want to do.
That's it, yeah. I think drive is really important, and knowing where you want to get to as well. And I probably get an email a week asking, how do I get into this job? What do I need to do? My son, my grandson, my next door neighbour's son, they're interested in doing what you do. And we've got a Facebook page so people read about what we do, and we get messages through there to say, how can I do this? This is really interesting. But yeah, it's about having drive and knowing what you've got to do. And I think you can do anything if you put mind to it. And I'm not perhaps the most intellectual of people, but I'm quite driven, and that helps.
Well, you've proved that by just explaining how you got to this position. I think that's just a lesson for all youngsters in life, really. If they want to get somewhere, work hard, and you'll get there.
That's it.
Yeah, just work hard, and that's a lesson in life. I think too many people want to get given things, don't they? But Kye, that was fantastic because you've explained that beautifully. And any young people out there wishing to get into things like fisheries, there's the perfect way of doing it. It's work hard at school, choose appropriately what you want to do, and just go for it and see what happens. Because you make your own luck in life, I believe, if you work hard enough.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right there.
Yeah, perfect. Right, so this is the bit in the podcast that everybody likes, because Andy shuts up for a few minutes and I say, Alex, over to you. You've got a few questions, I think, for Kye about the match fishing side of things.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Kye. Appreciate your time. Hello, mate.
No problem.
Obviously, I've known Kye for quite a while now, fishing against him and with him and that on the drains. And obviously, use my tackle shop. So you've been associated with Hot Rods for, did you say, or known the Hot Rods anglers for 25 years, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. So I was there. I remember being there. There's a picture of me with Billy Hughes the year.
Billy Hughes used to fish Hot Rods, did he?
Yeah. He was there, and I was in the boat the year Hot Rods beat Essex County in the Winter League, Cambridgeshire Eastern Winter League, and I didn't even really understand what was going on then. But yeah, a long time, 25 years. I've only fished with them for the last 10, but they were influential in my fishing career right from the very start.
Yeah, I mean they've always been associated with the Browning. I mean, you've obviously had some rods with the Hot Rods name and that you've designed for them and stuff like that, which is brilliant. So how long was that sort of tied up with Browning? How many years now?
What, the sponsorship deal?
Yes.
So actually that rod, which was released about 4 years ago, it was our 25-year anniversary. So it was the Hot Rod Silver, our silver anniversary. So that all came around when we were on a trip to Denmark with River Guden. So me, Steve Welford and Will Freeman were coming back from a big match there. We popped into Browning's headquarters, and we basically said, we're having our 25-year anniversary, and we've got this idea for a product that was, really close to our hearts and Fenland fishing. Little light wagglers fishing for roaches. Polly did that when he was about 15, and that's about all that people did. But we did it to good effect on the Jones.
Definitely specialist tool, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and nothing was out there, and it's the best rod for it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they're fantastic rods, aren't they?
You've got a couple in your shop still.
Yeah, well, I do. I don't know if I've got any left now. I think they all might have gone. So they'll be a collector's item, I think, now. But while you was on about, obviously, your trip back from Denmark, did you say? You do quite a few trips abroad and that. And recently you've come back from France in the Spencer's Challenge final.
Yeah, so literally a week today, we were powering up the M11 coming home from France. We had a brilliant week away. So we were on the Martinière Canal near Nantes in sort of west of France. And it was brilliant. We were fishing the Census Challenge Farm. We had a great time. Didn't catch huge amounts of fish, but it was just such a different competition to what you get in England. It was brilliant. Yeah.
I mean, obviously they're international rules, so if you can just explain to probably a lot of the listeners that wouldn't understand national rules, the main rules you have to abide by.
Yeah, so it is very different to UK fishing, and you have to sort of get your head around it. So first of all, the match duration is shorter, so it's 3 or 4 hours. This one was 4 hours. You have bait limit, so you can have a litre and a half of bait. That's 3 pints of bait. They're always bloodworm and joker matches as well, so a maximum of 1 pint or a third of half a litre of bloodworm and joker, and then you can have anything else you want. Some baits are banned, so bread is banned, for example. 30-metre pole limit, so you can't fish any further than 30 metres. They also have a quite an interesting 10-minute pre-baiting rule as well. So you get a big buzzer go 10 minutes before the match starts, and that's when you can feed everything by hand. So you can make balls, big balls. You can throw them in, and you've got 10 minutes to put those in. But after that point, you can't make a ground bait ball any bigger than or without using, or you can only use one hand to make that ball. So it's quite strict. There's all really strict bait checks and kit checks. They're all over my kit looking for the things like you can't have more than 10% of shot on your overshot on your rig, so you can't put too much lead on. You can't have back shot. All sort of things they're looking for. So it's really different. And then obviously, the way the Europeans attack these things. I mean, we fed, what did we do? We fed 10 balls at 30 metres by hand. We fed 8 rich balls over the top of that. We fed a line short and then 15 balls on the slider. And honestly, Alex, they were still throwing in balls of ground bait by the time we'd done all of that. It took 7 or 8 minutes to do that. So it's ridiculous.
Like chuck a bit of bait, don't they?
They do. They really do.
Yeah, they don't know what catapults like. Oh, they don't use catapults like we do around here.
Yeah, so in my section on the first day, the French, we were getting a few anglers behind us because they love to watch the English anglers. And I was the only person, this French in sort of pidgin English was speaking to me. He said he's the only person in the whole length that he saw with a catapult in his hand.
Really? It's mad, isn't it? I mean, whenever I fish a venue where it isn't loose feeding, I feel lost because I'm so used to just picking my catapult up off the side tray, dinking a few squats in or a bit of emp or whatever you're loose feeding, and it's so difficult to sort of sit on your hands almost and not do anything. It just seems not right to me. But
this is it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just the way we feed. I think because of the nature of the venues being clear and narrow, and that, I think if you chuck a load of ground bait in, I don't think they just don't respond to that sort of thing, do they? You have to keep regularly throwing balls rather than put it all in at the start.
Well, I think in English matches we've got a bit longer and we try to build the peg, whereas over there when it's shorter matches, it's all about your decisions. Your match is decided before you start. In that 10 minutes, that's when your match is decided.
Yeah. I mean, why do you think? I mean, they've obviously had lots of international rules competitions over here, and they don't really seem to take off, do they? Why do you think that is? Because obviously, like the shorter match, and everyone's used to fishing longer. What is your view on that?
I don't know. I really enjoy them. So we fished the Census Challenge qualifier, which goes on every year. That's one of my favourite matches, again, because it's just a little bit different. So that was on the Gloucester Canal. It has been for the last few years. There are a handful of international rules matches that I've fished, and it's really strange. But I was speaking to Rob Perkins, he's in our team, and he's been around forever. And he was explaining to me that the reason that a lot of these rules came in was because the match scene in France and in Europe was dying, and what they basically realised was that people didn't have the time, they didn't have the money, and they needed to make it accessible. So they restricted bait, whole length, and they restricted how long you're out there for. And if you think about it, match fishing, I think it's going through a little bit of a revival at the moment, but if we shortened our day and spent less on bait because we had to, and didn't have to have a 3-gram pole to be competitive, it might just open it up to other people. And for me, that with my sort of environment agency hat on as well, it's really important to get people into fishing, and I think that's just the same for match fishing. And as a tackle shop owner, you might think, I want to sell as much as I can, but I think you're a great guy, and you understand that it's far better to have more people fishing than a few people spending a lot of money. So I think in some cases, I think, there's a lot to be learned from that sort of approach and just shaking things up a bit and trying to change it to get things going.
Yeah. I've always enjoyed the international matches because they're always quite team orientated. Everyone's at the same length. There's no little advantages with the draw. It's the team that's got the tactics right on the day generally does the best, doesn't it? And
that's it. Yeah. I mean, the nearest we get to it was we fish Little Port a lot, don't we? And I think that's very close. You can all fish in a line. It's similar sort of venues. They love long, straight venues, minimum width. So it's a bit like the mid-level main drain where we fish. So, a little bit shallower, but sort of 8 to 10 foot deep, similar widths, road behind you. That's what they love for international rules venues. And so I think we've got some venues that can do it for sure.
So whereabouts did Hot Rods? They did. I think they did pretty well considering it's the first trip away, didn't they?
Yeah. So it was our first trip away. And it was all very, very new to us. So we came. I need to add to this to make it sound not so bad, but there were 128 teams there, and there were teams of 4, so there were over 500 anglers. So it's the biggest match I've fished for a long time. Even nationals, you don't get many big nationals. So we came 41st, which we were relatively happy with, and I would say actually that looking back now, there were 2 hard sections, two good sections, and in the good sections we were holding our own. That wasn't a problem. It was the harder sections that we basically didn't adapt to our approach. And I think looking back at it now, if we'd used the match as 2 practices and then fished on the Monday and Tuesday, we sort of knew what we needed to do, and I think we would have done a lot better. I think there were some things we seemed to catch the Poisson Chat, which is actually a black bullhead. We seemed to catch them pretty well, and they were pretty weighty fish. So I think, even in the hard areas, we would have done well. So we were 41st, Alex, but, it was in that sort of company, it was really good. And, everyone had to have won a match to qualify to get to that final. So there were no fools there.
Brilliant. Obviously, Odds won the East Midlands Winter League last year, quite convincingly, I think. Around to go, pretty much won it, which is quite an achievement with the standard of angler that fishes in the local league. Obviously, you did pretty well in the final as well, didn't you, on the drains and decoy?
Yeah, we did. So we tend to do pretty well. I think, I'm ever so proud of Hot Rods in the fact that we're quite an adaptable team. And I would say, across the country, we can go to any venue, whether it's, a tidal Trent or a narrow canal or a deep canal, and we can compete anywhere. So, to win the Winter League in the company that we had, we were confident we could do it, but it was still a massive undertaking. I would think, Alex, it's one of the most competitive leagues in the country, I would say. So yeah, we really felt that we could do a good job there, and we're proud of that. And then to get to the final was brilliant. We had a couple of rough draws, but a bit of local knowledge, and we came 4th, which was really good. But actually, our guys on decoy did brilliantly. They won that area there, and you'd kind of hope that it would be the drains team would almost be a bit of a formality, but we fell foul of a couple of dodgy pegs, but we did brilliantly off of some of the others, and so we came 4th, which is a brilliant achievement. But we really felt that last year.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think Stanjays, were they 3rd or?
Yeah, they were 3rd.
Yeah.
So they
just ahead. So that's another local team that did well in it.
Yes, they did brilliantly. Really,
they've got some fantastic anglers, haven't they? Obviously, Polly, Measy, Nuddy, loads of them, haven't they? Yeah. I mean, obviously, you were saying about the peg. Why do you? I mean, obviously, with the Environment Agency hat on, the venues are definitely getting better and better.
We did brilliantly off of some of the others, and so we came 4th, which is a brilliant achievement. But we really felt that could have been our year last year.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think Stanjays, were they 3rd or?
Yeah, they were 3rd.
Yeah.
So they
just ahead. So that's another local team that did well in it.
Yes, they did brilliantly. Really,
they've got some fantastic anglers, haven't they? Obviously, Polly, Measy, Nuddy, loads of them, haven't they? I mean, obviously, you were saying about the Peggy venues. Why do you? I mean, obviously, with the Environment Agency hat on, the venues are definitely getting better and better each year.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What is your sort of thinking behind it? What is your sort of view on it?
Well, I suppose the really easy corporate answer would be to say, water quality has never been better since the Industrial Revolution. So, we've got better water quality, so the fish will love more. But I think it's, far more complex than that. Fish fish are cyclical, so you get peaks and troughs, and I think we're definitely going through a peak. I think as well, what you tend to find on the Fenland system, and as anglers we all know this, and but to other people it might seem a bit strange, but there isn't a huge amount of habitat, so fish have to shoal up to feel comfortable, and places like March, where you've got tree cover and that sort of urban location, fish pile in there, and so the more fish that you get in a system, like the middle level, for example, the more fish there are that can shoal up. And when you think about it as well, we've had a couple of really warm, long summers, which are perfect for fish spawning. So, we've basically had perfect conditions. The fish are thriving, and the venues are benefiting as a result. So, we've even seen, just to add to that, seen a perch explosion in the last couple of years. That's because there's so many fry around. So the predators are doing well.
I think Andy might want to question you about perch and the size of it and stuff. I think come on to that a bit later.
Can I butt in?
Yeah.
Can I butt in?
I thought you might.
Yeah, I'm going to butt it in. Because Kye, what we're finding out on the drains with the pike, as you know, is that it's become pretty disastrous. And one of the reasons I think there's a perch boom is because I think they're becoming the main predator in lots of stretches in the drains as well. Never seen so many perch in my life in some places, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just don't think, the catching a zander is very rare in some places now, but the pike population really has dropped off. And do you think there's a shift in the main predator in certain parts of these drains?
So that is something that happens within sort of predator prey relationships. You get a prey species that drives the predators, or you get a predator species that drives the prey. But I think generally things balance out, and actually there isn't a huge amount of evidence to suggest that there is a big shift in the number of predators or the different predators. And I noticed that there was a pike match a couple of weeks ago on the 16 foot, and there were I think 140 fish caught in that. But what we don't do when we do our surveys is we don't specifically target species, or very rarely. We've done some barbel research where we really target species. But I think if we were to look at pike and perch a bit more closely, we might understand it a bit more. But my understanding is that if you've got a big couple of fry boom years, actually pike aren't great at feeding on small fish, so it would make perfect sense that perch actually take over as a predator, because they're taking advantage of those small fry that are their sort of niche target. And then in a few years' time, when they're a bit too big for perch, then the pike will then sort of benefit as well. But I think I also see a post about a load of zander being caught as well in the March Town Centre. So I just think
they're only tiddlers. I mean, this is. I do not want to get on this subject tonight, but I'm going to touch upon it. Sorry, but we do know that there's been quite a lot of pike have been taken, and it's in the drains around this area. There is a big shift, and it's quite from. I mean, you'll know this from the PAC. I've had a lot of talk with EA Cams and Links based. That the guys who do this properly, the catch results locally have gone through the floorboards. It's quite remarkable. Having said that, the amount of perch that you see around now, the last 3 or 4 years, it's incredible. So, I mean, I'm not saying I'm right, because you know far more than I do, but just being fishing around it for a long, long time, in certain areas, there seems to be a definite shift in the main predator. I mean, just looking at, I know we're going to talk about the match results a bit later on, but talking about March and the old course to the Dean, it's absolutely incredible of how many silverfish are in the town centre at the minute. You'd expect pike to follow. Now, Alex will know this. Every time I'm out and about, last season before that, I would always stop at the end of the match and ask the guys if they've had any jack trouble. And none at all. Yet 10 years ago, they were being pestered by jacks. So something's happened. The match anglers aren't getting harassed by the jacks, because if you think about it, you get those silverfish in a feeding frenzy, the pike are going to absolutely smash into them, and it doesn't happen. And I think happened.
I think it's March is one of them venues. I can't put a finger on why there isn't more pike strikes, and obviously there must be pike there. There can't be that volume of fish not to have any pike there. But like, if you fish the deeper drains, or stay for like the 20 foot where they're all shoulder footprint, there's pike striking everywhere and fish jumping out of the water. And
I agree. I see that as well.
in
amazing,
March in the town, don't see pike striking anywhere. Do you think maybe there's more zander through the town? And I don't know.
I mean, my theory is on that is that if there are enough fish to sustain pike, then they're not going to chase. They're just going to literally, move into fish and feed that way. But we've fished Gravely Drain and places that are literally black with fish, and you see fish striking all day.
You have to sort of
I do get that
to avoid them, don't you?
Yeah. So I do get that it is a bit strange that there aren't huge number of pike in March, especially with the number of prey fish, and I don't get that.
No, I mean
it's weird, but maybe it's something we need to take a bit of a closer look at.
Well, I mean, it'd be quite interesting to do a survey because myself and Alex were talking about this before we came on air, so to speak, and it's amazing the number of bait fish that are piling into March Town Centre, and every year it seems to become more and more and earlier because traditionally it was when it got colder over the Christmas period, but I've got I go out all over the place, and I've got a side imaging unit I use on my boat, and it's amazing how certain parts of the drains that link to this water system are absolutely barren. Yet I could have showed you 2 years ago the mother of all bream shoals that these pods of bream would meet up. It was like a gathering from a film. It was incredible. And it was the biggest bream shoal I've ever seen in my life. It was huge. And I couldn't even hazard a guess of how many bream were in this shoal, but there was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pounders. But sadly last year they didn't appear. And so out in the sticks, this bream shoal would always gang up every sort of end of December, beginning of January time for 4 to 6 weeks and then disperse. Last year they didn't appear at all, which is really started to worry me a little bit because I hope something hasn't happened. But the other thing that we found as the pike anglers in the area is the pike they're not resident. They move an awful long way through the system, and if you notice, if pike anglers do share a little bit of information, which is incredibly rare, you can spot. It's very easy, as you know, to spot the fish because their spots are a bit like human fingerprints, that they're very unique. So we did get an idea a few years ago of certain fish that had moved considerable distances through the local water system. Sadly, those fish haven't now appeared again. So things are happening, under the radar. Things are going on, and I think what's happened is a lot of the big pike no longer exists. I think the silverfish have really boomed because of the lack of predation, and I think the perch have really boomed because, like you rightly said, that they can feed really, really efficiently on the small fry. So things are changing, I think, locally quite significantly. Probably brought about by reasons that we didn't want, but it'd be interesting over the next few years we'll talk about this in a minute, if the EA can get on top of things and local people can help out a bit more, and if things settle down, I think the drains from the predator point of view, if we can get on top of things, it would be absolutely awesome in a few years' time again, because it's got the ingredients there for the pike and zander stocks to really take off again.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to remember, and I think I said it earlier, that fish populations are cyclical, and that's population as a whole, but species as well. So, if pike numbers are low now, I would fully expect them to perhaps come back for the fact that there's plenty of prey or bait fish there for them. So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. And we have since we met with the PAC, we've said that we'll look into the sort of pike data, but it's very difficult to extrapolate it from the information we're getting. So we might have to do some targeted stuff. But yeah, we'll look into that. And of course, every part of the fishery is important as another. So we'll see what we can do on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm more than welcome to help. I don't know if you're looking at tagging or something. I'm sure some of the guys I know would get involved with that because they're very keen to see what's going on. Alex, I don't know how you feel, but maybe if we start talking to Kye about the Environment Agency side of things, and then we'll get back onto the match fishing, because I know
definitely,
because I know the results even on the March Open were quite amazing at the weekend, so you can tap back into that in a minute. So, Kye, we had a little chat beforehand, and we're talking about your role within the Environment Agency. So, can you just explain again what your role is at the minute, please?
So I'm the fisheries technical specialist for the Great Ouse catchment. So I'm essentially the fisheries specialist. which basically means anything to do with fish, it comes through me. And I think essentially what that is about is protecting fish and driving sort of conservation of fish and fisheries. So, it's quite a varied role. You wouldn't believe the amount of things. Last week I was working on multi-million-pound pumping station schemes. This week, I'm involved in building an angling survey to understand tourism and the effects of tourism and from angling, the fens, all sorts of stuff. And essentially, my job is there to understand the fishery and help the Environment Agency, the people that we regulate, the people that we permit, to make the right decisions to not only impact the fishery, but actually impact it in a positive way and protect it from something that might be negative as well. So, all sorts of stuff from, monitoring. Our teams do a lot of monitoring. We talked about it earlier, all the survey stuff, fisheries advice. I get involved in some enforcement stuff, not a huge amount, but I've got all the training and warrant, the same as our full-time guys. All sorts of stuff. You wouldn't believe the depth and breadth of what we do. In fact, you probably would because you follow our Facebook page, which covers it really well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just going to link into that. I mean, we must come back to the tourism. You touched on that. We'll come back to that in a few minutes because that's a very interesting point as well. But yeah, I mean, you've put. I mean, I was talking to you about this beforehand. I think it's you and two other guys that run the social media side of things. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so we set up. It's quite a long-running project. This we're like little Jack Russells, and when we jump on something that we really passionate about, we'll keep going for it. So we were basically trying. We felt there was a better way to get messages out there about what the Environment Agency did. So if you imagine, I work in a team of about 8 fisheries staff. And we're all passionate about what we do, about what the Environment Agency does. And we know that we provide a really good service. And actually, for someone buying a rod license, we felt it was, there were some really good stories to tell. But I've worked in the tackle trade for 20 years. I go into tackle shops I won't tell my boss, not 5 times a week, obviously not. No, only once a week. I'm always in tackle shops. And when you speak to people and they ask me what I do, and I'm really open and upfront, and I like to engage with people, not always positive, but I do like to engage. They understand about my job very little. So what they think we do is we check rod licenses and we stop fish, and that is actually a very small proportion of what we do. And what we felt, as me and a couple of the other guys, we felt that there was a really sort of a missing point in the agency's sort of communication strategy. And we felt that would be, covered very nicely by a Facebook page, and we sort of put that to the business about 3 years ago, and we got approval nearly a year ago now, so we're nearly a year old, and basically we felt that we could help deliver some fisheries messages. We felt that we could help rod license sales. So of course, all the work we do is funded by rod license income. So if the more money we get, the more we can do. The less money we get, the less rod licenses we sell, the less we can do. So we felt that was a really good way of doing that. And we started the page a year ago, and I have given presentations on it. So this is like a bit of a trailblazing page. It's a pilot, and we're working with DEFRA on it. And basically, depending on whether it was a success or not, we're then looking to roll it out nationally. And it surpassed even what I thought it would do. I mean, we've got a great following. We get very little negative feedback, and when we do get feedback, we always answer people. So essentially, we've got a live feed to all of our customers, which I think people really appreciate. We're really proud to be open and honest about the work that we do, because ultimately, people are paying us to do it. We won't bow to pressure. We know we're doing the right stuff, but we'll listen to people. We were out today talking to a barbel angler who's got some ideas. So we'll openly listen to people. But essentially, we want to tell people what we do, and it's growing really big. We've got nearly 3,000 likes, which I thought we'd get in about 3 years, and we're not even a year old yet, so it's massive.
Well,
really good.
Yeah, I think you're right, because half of your negative comments probably come from me, if I'm being honest with you, because I'm a bit of a pain in the backside. But I think I'm a classic example of what you're talking about. I didn't really envisage how much you guys actually do. If I'm being hand on heart, there's me. I have 2 rods.
So tell me, now you've been following the Facebook page for a little while, do you really get a feel, because this is the feedback we're getting, people definitely get a feel of the amount of work we do, and I just wondered if that was your experience.
Oh, definitely. I mean, as I've told you this before, the transparency you show on these posts as well, I think has to be applauded, because it's easy to put on the positive stuff, and you do so the diversity of all the things you do. I mean, I was quite interested in looking at the problems the old Bedford had in the summer, obviously with the weed growth and the lack of water that's always in there. And so it's interesting to see how you guys go and tackle those sort of problems. But then you engage in social days, trying to get people into angling. Then you have surveys, and it's just so diverse. It's fantastic. But like I said, I am one of your biggest critics at times. But again, I think criticism is positive, because if everyone's open and honest, and then we can move forward, can't we? And I think that's the way that we should do everything in life. So you'll know what I'm about to say. It's when you have your fisheries enforcement outcome posts, you put on there how many incidents you had and how many were attended. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, those figures don't look great, but then you do emphasise the fact that you can't be everywhere. And you do need people to phone in, and you do need people to stay on top of things to let you know. And the first few posts, I started chuntering away, and then now I'm thinking, actually, you can't be everywhere. You can only do what you can do. But the fact that you're so honest about it as well, I think it's hats off. And that's, I think, where people are coming around and looking at this and going, actually, it's a hard job. You do try your hardest. I mean, I know Al Thompson, not well, but if ever there's an incident out in the fens, he's there. He is out there, come rain, come shine. If he can get there straight away, he's straight out. He's helping out. He's asking the right questions. He's sorting out the problems, and he's legally doing the correct things. And I've seen him in action. I've met yourself last year, and we were on a side drain, working on the 40-foot, and there was someone made the sounds that someone had been doing some illegal fish removal, and everyone shot down there and met up. And I thought, no, you guys, you want to do the right thing all the time, but you've only got 24 hours in a day, and there's only a few of you. You can't cover all bases all the time. So, I have to sort of take a backward step here and go, I was probably a bit too overzealous in some of the comments. But again, that's what we do in life, and we say about it.
Well, we welcome that. We want to hear what people think. And actually, just to give you a bit of background on those enforcement outcome posts, what we realise, and we're always learning, and this is the great thing about Facebook, we can change how we speak to our customers. But ultimately, people were saying, I'm phoning stuff in and no one's attending, so, what's the point? And actually, that wasn't exactly what was happening. So, people wanted to understand what was happening to their phone call that they were pointing to the Environment Agency. But we had a message as well to give, which was not as many people are phoning in as you think. So we wanted to be really open, and we thought it would be a really good way to put a table up there. And we spoke to the PAC about it, and they actually hit us head on and said, you're not doing enough. And we said, we are, you just don't know about it. So that was the tool that we used. We set up the table. But to answer your question, why aren't we attending as many instances as we can? Well, we work in exactly the same way as the police do. So we're intelligence-led. So, if you see something happening, someone with a net legally removing fish, phone it through to the Environment Agency. It goes to a switchboard. It goes out to a fisheries enforcement officer. We've always got someone on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then they make the assessment whether they attend or not. Now, if you see something and you go down the pub and you tell your mate and we don't ever get the phone call, that incident to us has never happened because we'll never hear about it. And actually, half linked to that is an incident that's talked about on Facebook, but isn't reported to the Environment Agency because, you wouldn't report your house was on fire via Facebook. You need to get that through to the fire brigade, otherwise it's not, it's not their fault if they don't attend. There's that as well. People aren't reporting things, so our emergency number is 0800 80 70 60. But if they do report it, also, we work like the police. We prioritise what we can attend. We can't be everywhere at the same time. But equally, if what's being reported isn't illegal, so for example, 2 anglers fishing without a landing net, that isn't illegal, so we wouldn't attend. So if we get about 20 calls a month, and most people think we get hundreds, but we don't. We get about 20 a month. If 18 of those are because people are fishing without a landing net, or there's 3 cars that look like they're a bit suspicious up at 40-foot bridge, that's not legal. So we won't necessarily attend. So we've got to be very careful about what we attend. But having said that, that information is really important, and what we do, we log all that information. We've got an intelligence system, so car, vehicle registration numbers, descriptions, locations. We log that. It allows us to sort of map the high risk areas, the times that things happen, and data as well. So we can share that with other forces, other areas. So if we get someone travelling from London that's doing illegal activity, we can tap into the same intelligence system. So it's all really important, but people need to remember they need to phone it through. And to go back to your first point, that table we felt was the best way to show that. It shows what happens when you report it. It shows exactly the action we took, and literally people can find out to the report that they made what happened. So we felt it was a really useful thing to do.
Yeah, it is very good and transparent, and I think also from my own point of view and the guys that I know locally, I think a lot of the gripes we have are historical. It seems as though the Environment Agency the last year or so are really stepping up to the mark big time, whereas I remember, I'm not even going to go on to it too much, but 5, 10, 15 years ago, we would call in, we'd find nets, we'd find people fishing out of season. No one would turn up, and I think that's kind of sitting in the back of people's heads, and people have done the calling up in the past, and it's like, oh, why should I bother anymore? But it definitely seems as though things are turning around, and it's not as though people in the past, from the Environment Agency didn't want to do it. It's time constraints when you work in a business, and I can understand about all that. However, people will say, well, they've got to do their job. But someone like yourself, Kye, being so transparent upfront and so passionate about doing the right thing, things are moving forward in the right way. I'm absolutely certain of it. But if I can just, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions anyway, because people have got in touch with me about the Facebook page and about the enforcement outcomes, and it's interesting because they actually want to do more to help. People are actually understanding now that they need to get in touch with the Environment Agency first as a matter of course. And just to reiterate, that number is 0800 80 70 60. That's 0800.
It's on the back of your rod licence.
Yeah, back of your rod licence. Stick it in your phone. So if you see anything untoward, you've got to phone the Environment Agency hotline immediately, and then they will make the judgment from there. So that's the first thing that anglers we need to do. Now, going back to my question, I did see, looking back through the posts, that there was a couple of Fike Net posts. Now, some of my piking friends will go, yeah, but what about, we knew about this net last year, we knew about this incident last year, and what they wanted was, because you're being so transparent about everything, they do realise that some of these incidents are ongoing, so you can't post them, obviously, because there's a criminal system behind it and you don't want to interfere with any evidence. But they'd like to see some of the gnarly negative things happening as well, and where, so they can help keep an eye on it as well. And maybe other local people like dog walkers and farmers can also keep an eye on things. So is there a chance to show a bit more of that in the future as well?
So again, I think that might just be perspective, because I sit in the team of the enforcement officers, and I get involved with a lot of the enforcement stuff. And actually, we will be as open as anything about posting about what we've found. So there are some things that we can't post because, there's ongoing investigations and it's sensitive, so you're quite right to mention those. But, there is nothing that we won't post. We want to get the message out there, and whether the message is, we have helped a fishery recover from a pollution, or whether we've caught 4 guys stealing 2 tons of fish from the Great Ooze with a net. We'll get those messages out there, and there's nothing that we won't share, as long as it's not sensitive. So I hope no one feels that we would ever hold anything back. And actually, it's quite the opposite. We know that the interesting, juicy stuff is what people want to see, and that's what gets shared, and that's what drives traffic to our page. So it's actually the opposite, Andy. So I would probably just say that of all the things out there that people think are happening, it's probably a really good example of actually putting it into perspective, and I can probably quite positively say that there isn't a huge amount that we haven't shared, and if we haven't, it's because of a good reason. So, but I'll remember that, and I'll speak to the lads about it. But there isn't anything we won't share.
Well, that's a really good answer.
We'll continue to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of Facebook groups looking. I can't remember what they're called now, and I was a member of one of them, but I just left because I felt it was just going around in circles. And I think you're right. I think the guys want to cause gossip by posting things on there first, rather than get in touch with you guys. So it's vital
Yeah.
that everybody gets in touch with the Environment Agency first and foremost, and we go from there, because it did feel like it was a bit, if you guys don't know, well, you can't do anything about it. So, there's no point.
No, that's it. And equally as well, if you've seen someone fishing illegally at a bridge and you post it on Facebook, if that guy's reading that post, he's going to be gone before we get there, and we're going to be chasing our tails. So it needs to come to us. What we won't do, we won't respond now to anything on Facebook that hasn't got an instant number next to it, because we're trying to encourage people to report it, and they'll get an instant number once they've reported it. So that's the main push. But yeah, I mean, ultimately there are things that people can do. We fund the voluntary bailiff scheme service through the Angling Trust. That is how, a great way of us getting intelligence, great way of sharing it officially. Data is protected, so we need to be careful about how we share that. And it's, a really good way. People don't realise it, but that scheme also helps us speak with police forces and helps them put fisheries enforcement on their agenda. So I would confidently say, a lot of people have got things to say about the VBS scheme, but it's actually a brilliant scheme, and there's some great people working on it. It could be a lot better, and I think it's gradually sort of being embraced by anglers and the angling community. But ultimately, it could be a brilliant service. But even what we get now with it is valuable enough, and it's certainly led to incident response and prosecution outcomes, which is exactly what we need. But we need more people to get involved with that sort of thing. But ultimately, we're not snobby about where that information comes from. If someone doesn't want to get involved with the VBS, or they don't think it's for them, we still want that information. So we would love for them to get involved in the voluntary bailiff scheme. But if they don't want to and they want to share this information, they can do it through other routes. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to that, I think you probably know, I won't go into the VBS because, yeah. But actually, the VBS, if you're on the VBS, you don't actually have any more powers than myself, Alex, or a dog walker. But you can tap into and add to that, what they want, that hotspot information that Paul Thomas, I think he collates it every week. That's the other thing I was going to tap into. Anglers are only there for a short period of time. I'd like to see a system rolled out where we just encourage the general public to be part of it. Because if you think about the dog walkers, the land workers, people who are cycling, they haven't got a clue. They do not know what's going on yet, and I think we're missing out massively here. So just relying on anglers to pass on information is a little bit restrictive. And I just wondered, it'd be quite nice in the future if we could try and make this a bit more of a countrywide awareness scheme that, there's illegal fish removal going on, there's things going on that we shouldn't tolerate, and basically anybody should know how and what to do, because I bet the general public don't know, and that to me is perhaps an area that we could perhaps attack in the future.
Yeah, and again, that's all about education. So that's, a massive part of our role at the Environment Agency is to educate people about things that are going on. And, if we need information, then you're right. We shouldn't be restricting that to anglers. Okay, they are in the know to a certain extent, but, we need to speak to people in areas that are high risk, and the more people we can get involved, the better. Again, I think our Facebook page is really good at that. We get a lot of people that are non-anglers on there that read what we're doing, understand what we're doing. And of course, a lot of the, again, linked to the VBS scheme, you see Operation Traverse posters around which explain what's going on, how to report it, what might be an incident. So there's a lot to be done, and it's definitely going in the right direction. But we just need more information ultimately. That is what we need, and we just need it in the right way. But fisheries enforcement, it's a very complex subject. People, I don't think, realise how complicated it is. We have to work under the same legal restrictions as the police, so the Police and Criminal Evidence Act we have to work under. So how we deal with things is very specific, and it's not just as easy as approaching people, or you talked earlier about VBS not having a huge amount of powers, but ultimately it's the intelligence we need. We've got the powers and the skills in the Environment Agency, but what we don't really want to do is spend all our time checking licenses. We want to get out there, get involved in the juicy technical fisheries stuff, the fisheries enforcement stuff that is going to make a difference, that's going to really make a change. So, we'll get there in the end, and I think Paul Thomas and the guys that work locally and the VBS are definitely getting there, and it's changed a lot since the first sort of few inductions that I went on. But yeah, I think it's definitely going in the right way. But Andy, if you want to get involved, you can do it in any way. Just do it in the right way, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've answered all those questions eloquently, as normal. It's fantastic. And yeah, I mean, locally, we do keep an eye on things. And the first thing we always do is phone the hotline. If we're ever in doubt, phone the hotline. I mean, I'm quite lucky because I know some of you guys a bit more personally, so I've got direct contact and just go, is this an offence? Do I need to phone? And the answer is always, if in doubt, phone it through. And I think that's what we need to tell everybody. Just if you're in doubt, phone it through, and then let the specialist make a decision upon it.
That's it. Yeah. And then if that means we only get out to 20% of our calls because 80% of them weren't actually an offence, that doesn't matter because that information's there. And it just means that that one occasion when you might have thought you got it wrong, but actually got it right, that's perfect. So that's what we need.
Exactly, yeah, and it's just making everybody aware of that. So, Kye, I mean, absolutely brilliant. That was so. Again, transparency. I can't applaud you enough. It's fantastic. Right, Alex, are you still awake?
Yeah, I'm just about here, mate. Yeah.
Sorry,
Alex.
Yeah, sorry. We could.
No, that was interesting.
We could have shunted on all night. Right? Did you want to? Because I'm the match results at March were again fantastic. Do you want to kick off?
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously last week was the practice match, and there was some brilliant weight. I think there was a 45 and a 44, and I sort of thought, wow, that's the impressive individual weight. As a venue march can be a bit peggy with the gaps and bridges and bits and bobs, so it's always a tough round in our league. But normally there's going to be a team that fishes it the best, and I mean Image and Mark One both had two really good scores this weekend. 20, I think Image had 24 or 25, 25 wasn't it? And Mark One had 26. Is that right?
It was close, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a point difference, but they've both fished really, really well. So team-wise, Frank Image were first, Spencer's Mark One White second, Tackle and Bates were third on 29. I think Hotrods were fourth with 41, and then Stanjay Gold on 42. So it's like we were saying earlier, it's a competitive league, and I mean the league standings now. Tackle and Bates and Mark One White both on 4 points. Image are third with what are they on now? 3. So they're on 6 points, and then I think Hot Rods are on 7. So it's all to play for on the league side of things. Individually wise, I mean Steve Winters has had an unreal weight, £60. That's like a £600 weight on a commercial. Really, when you look at it, it's just ridiculous. I mean, fair play to him. He's drawn D1, which is a brilliant area behind the swimming pool, or library, as locals know it, on the high concrete peg. He's just caught at 6 metres all day. He's had just over 300 fish for £60, so they're a real good stamp. And I spoke to them, and most of them have been gusters or pommies or silver bream. I mean, what are they actually? What is the environment agency calling those species of fish? Do we know?
They're silver bream, and you can tell them because they've basically got a roach for the size of the body. They've got a roach sort of size scale. Also, the fins are slightly different in line. But if you look at their eye, they've got a big eye and they've got a big scale for their body size. That's the silver bream. And the other thing is that people don't realise is they feed like roach. They don't feed on the bottom. They feed a bit higher up as well. So when you start catching those and you lay a bit of line on, you don't catch them anymore because they're not feeding on the bottom.
Yeah. So they're a proper species. They're not a hybrid then.
No, they're not. No, and they love sort of lowland rivers. So the Fenland drains are massive for them. You catch a lot on the Nene as well. But yeah, they're sort of locally abundant, I would say.
Mm. Yeah, they're definitely a strange fish. They do feed like roach. I know they like a bit of hemp loose fed at them some days, and they're quite attracted to noise like roach. And then some days they just disappear like the bream, don't they? They're a bit temperamental species. But I mean, that £60 weight is, wow. It's unreal, unbelievable. I mean, I think Steve Welford, the ever-consistent Steve Welford, was second with 48 pound off.
42 was it? Brilliant.
Yeah, 42.12. And then Gary Miller's had 38.13. Elliot Newman £37.2, and that's all in the 5 pegs or 4 pegs behind the swimming pool and library. I mean, that's just mad, isn't it? I mean, what reason do you think they're living there in those sort of numbers?
I think it's cover, Alex. Again, if you think about it, you've got all that tree cover, which they'll naturally sort of frequent. They'll want to be there because they'll feel safe. You've got a bridge as well. It's urban, so it's a little bit warmer. I've got a really good example. We've got a really good example. So we used to do a survey on a river near Milton Keynes, and we used to catch £1.5 to £2 roach in this little bit of river every year. We always used to look forward to it. And then the landowner one year chopped all the trees down, and we never ever caught a roach bigger than 4 ounces from that section again. So, the trees weren't in the river, they were just on the bank of the river. But fish love a bit of cover, and that, there's cover throughout March, but if you think about it, that is the densest bit of cover there. And there's so many gaps as well. There's places for fish to hide. So if I was a fish, I think I'd be there.
Definitely. I mean, it seems like each year there seems to be getting more and more fish into the system at March. And I was saying to Andy, like, effectively with the predators, cormorants and other things, they're just natural commercial fisheries, aren't they? They're just all forced into areas, and that's why the fishing's so good.
Yeah, they're so productive. They're shallow. The fens is a productive farmland. Well, that means it's the same sort of substrate that's in the rivers as well. So it makes them productive. There's a lot of food there. So fish grow well. It can support a lot of fish, and actually, there's quite a lot of algae throughout the year, so you don't necessarily need cover in physical cover. It's just coloured all the time, so that supports fish as well, makes them feel a bit more safer, I guess. So they're not too keen to shoal up all year round. So yeah, it's they're amazing fisheries. We're so lucky to have them, aren't we, Alex?
Oh yeah. I mean, March is probably the pinnacle winter venue in the country now, without a doubt. I can't think of any that's better than that or as consistent as that. I mean, as a venue of 100 pegs, it is peggy, but where can you have a day's fishing, catch 11, 12 pound and come nowhere in your section on a natural venue? There just isn't anywhere, is there?
It's amazing. I think it's slightly better, fairer when we get really into the winter, isn't it? When the roach move in, and it becomes more of a bread and roach match. But even now, I mean, they're just not.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few rudd and bits and bobs caught. I mean, I've always sort of said that the rudd sort of do a disappearing act normally around this sort of time. They're sort of travelling about, moving. I mean, do you ever do any tagging of rudd, and sort of where do they go? I mean,
we don't.
Are they still there and don't feed, or?
I would think that those rudd, they get caught and then they leave. They're a shoal fish, really strong shoaling behaviour, and I think a few of them get caught and they get stressed and they move out and they move to the marinas and stuff. But we do a lot of tagging of fish, but it's really expensive, and it's the size of fish we can tag has to be quite big because of the size of the tag. So we don't tend to do it on small fish, but we know that they can move, and they can move a long way in a short period of time. So that's my gut feeling. But equally, they can just shut up feeding as well. I know an angler that fishes the Nene 3 times a week. He only fishes overnight, and he catches £100 at least one of those occasions every week. When was the last time you heard an angler fishing the Nene who caught £100 for green? It just doesn't happen, does it? So those fish are there. They just feed when they want to feed. And we fish 10 till 3. Worst time ever to fish, probably fish, I'd imagine. So, yeah.
I mean, obviously, the drains and that are full of bream and stuff like that, and pre-baited in the summer. And you can catch some bream then, but it has to be first light or early morning, or like say, fish through the night. It's surprising how many bream are actually in the drains, but you don't actually catch them in the match conditions, do you? Because of, the 10 till 3, everyone turning up at once, and they all disappear out of the match length, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, as a venue, the Narrows and the sort of what we call waterside, or the bottom end of the sort of not BMX track, the old railway bridge, it didn't fish quite as bad and quite as good, and I think that's down to perhaps the roach haven't migrated in yet. Do you feel? Is it not the numbers there yet? Or?
That's exactly where I was, Alex. And I caught 106 fish. I had 6 roach that were less than 2 inches long and 100 perch. I think they caught a lot of roach above me, and it just made me feel, basically the weight dwindled as you got further away from Wigston's Bridge, and I think they were just shoaled up there. I think it was clear, wasn't it? There was no flow, so nothing to actually force them out of that area. They were just packing in a bit tighter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think when they do arrive, that'll be a completely different venue. It normally is so consistent there, isn't it, down that bottom bit?
Yeah.
So just
normally I mean, obviously they use the grass section above Wigston's, which is normally sort of before Christmas. That's the area you want to draw. But I think £14 on the first section, which normally, I think last week, £28 skimmers won that section. So with no flow and less colour, that's probably why the weights are down a bit. Like I say, them perks, there's tons and tons of them in the river at the minute. Tons and tons. I think it was last summer where we definitely had a big influx of those in the drain. So that's March really. I mean, we talk about March every week. It's a bit boring saying how good it is, but it is just phenomenal fishing. I mean, while we were talking about March, I know you've sort of got some plans and different bits and bobs in the pipeline. With me and Andy sort of plan to perhaps have one of the local businesses on air, someone that's not really associated with fishing, but just talk about the trade that anglers bring to the town. Yeah. I don't know if you've got any information or anything like that you can share with us. Or...
Obviously, so we're reinvesting fishing license income back into fisheries, and DEFRA, who are our sort of mother organisation, that they set criteria for how we spend that money, and one of them is not only just to improve the environment and to improve people's lives, but also to improve business. So I remember, I'm not sure if you remember it, Alex, but about 12 years ago, I got some money for putting platforms at Benwick, and I based a lot of that on the impact, the sort of economic impact on the local area. So there was a pub in the town, the shop had just shut down, and basically I said, I'm going to spend 20 grand here, and I'm going to make a difference to Benwick. It was becoming unsafe, the banks were becoming unsafe, and I felt that if anglers moved away from there, it would really impact the local area. Yeah. And I remember we did a short video with the pub owner at the time, and he was like, "This is amazing." He said, the angling trade that I get on a Sunday for a match day sees me through the winter, and that really got me thinking. And I tell you what else got me thinking as well. 2 years ago, the Angling Trust asked the Environment Agency or me to help run the Angling Trust Winter League final, and I had a bit of a problem with Fenland District Council, actually, in that they didn't really understand why they should back competition in the fens. And it made me realise that they didn't realise how important fishing was. And when I say fishing, I mean angling tourism. And actually, it's invisible to them. They didn't understand it at all, even though they've got a tourist board. And I had some really good meetings with the council. And I did some back-of-the-fag packet calculations. And I reckoned that the Winter League final that went on for about 8 weeks, if you think about all the practicing and the matches on decoy and how far people have travelled, I probably brought about 70 grand into the fens in the winter, and that was huge. So I did a bit of work, and I've managed to get some funding this year to look at the socio-economic impact of angling and angling tourism in the fens. So I'm working with Substance, who've worked on the Environment Agency's National Angling Strategy and the Canal and River Trust as well, and the work they do with the coaching side of things. And we're going to look at how much fishing brings to the fen from an angler's perspective, but also a business perspective. I'm hoping to get that up and running. So it'll be a survey, and then I'm going to go and speak to businesses as well. And hopefully, Alex, I can use shops like yours and businesses to reach out to anglers, people that are coming to the area to fish, and basically get their views on how much they're spending, why they come to the fen. And then ultimately, what I'm going to do is then go to businesses and go to the councils and say, this is how much we're bringing in. What can you add to the mix? How can you help us bring more people into the fens? Exactly like they do in Northern Ireland, actually. So, they make a massive amount of money from travelling anglers, and they really get it. And that's where I've sort of got my inspiration from. It sounds like you guys have got the same sort of idea. So, yeah, that should be up and running in about a month's time. We're going to have an online questionnaire, and I'm going to go get as many people as I can involved in that so we can get a really good handle on it. And hopefully, in 3 years' time, not only will I protect fishing in the fens by showing people how important it is, but I'll help drive a bit of investment as well, which is really important.
Well, Kye, it's really interesting you're talking about that, because obviously you've got our full support for that, and we'll help whichever way we can using this, this media. But also, I mean, we were talking about, myself and Alex were talking about this a while back, and I think your £70,000 is a very pessimistic figure. I think when you look at the B&Bs, the pubs, everything that anglers spend money on locally just to be here over a weekend, it must really rack up, and it's a bit surprising. Local councils don't recognise it. They perhaps just take it for granted. They perhaps don't even realise what is happening locally in this sport, because we are quite, I suppose, insular in what we do is that people just know what's going on. So it'll be really interesting to see what figures you can pull out of this.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that, and we're going to share it as well. So that'll be on our Facebook page, which is you can find it by searching at Ooze Fish EA, or just type Great Ooze Environment Agency and Great Ooze into a search engine or Facebook, and you'll find it. But yeah, I want to get as many people as I can involved in that, and ultimately share the responses. But I think it'll really change the way people look at angling tourism, which is really important, I think. And I think people just underestimate it. The fens are a nationally significant fishery, and we don't take advantage of it. So Alex does. He does a great job running the shop, and I think he's a great part of that sort of Fenland institution already. But I think we need to work a bit harder on the stuff that we take for granted, like you said, Andy.
Well, I think it's anglers appreciate what's going on, but the general public, I think they see the sport as just smelly old men that sit on a riverbank, and they don't actually realise what goes into behind the scenes. And it's I do a lot of I've got a lot of contacts in Sweden and America now, and the difference from those countries of how the sport is portrayed to here is, well, it's chalk and cheese. It's incredible, and the finance and the sponsorship and all the money that's ploughed into it in those countries is, well, it's just incredible, and it's a different world. But that's for another day. Right, Alex, have you got other match results for this week, please?
Yeah. So I'll quickly go through the Ramsey Club matches. The Wednesday Open was Mary's, which is sort of the start of the old lean. Is it, Kye? Is it sort of the top end, or would you say the bottom end? Yeah, it's sort of the top end.
Top end. Yeah. It's all one big system, really. It all goes to German compensation.
I mean, it's a venue that seems to be getting better and better each year. I mean, I think as looking at these weights, I don't think the fish have moved in there just yet either, or the rope shoals haven't anyway. John Lott won it from peg 9, which normally associate pegs 1, 2 and 3 to be the out-and-out flyers on there. But he's had, 11, 14. Mainly bits and bobs, or small fish as we call them, on the big maggots and casters. So, I mean, casters and maggots don't really fish on a lot of the drains. It's mainly sort of squats and pinkies. But Tamara's is definitely one of those venues where you can catch a few fish on casters. Runner-up was Harry Young, Fenland character. He's had £9.12. Again, lots of small fish. And third was Malk Sampson with 8.12. So, I mean, the weights are a little bit down on there, but give it a couple of weeks and a bit of cold weather, and I think them weights will be back into the 20s where they normally are for this time of year. It's a good venue, isn't it, really, St Mary's, because the access is good. You can park behind the peg, and it's pretty comfortable fishing. So that was St Mary's on Wednesday, and then this Sunday was the first match at Factory Bank, which is a venue you love, don't you, Kye? You love fishing down there.
Yeah, I love Factory Bank, little old Factory Bank. Actually, I'm trying to drive some investment there, so there's development going on there. So, this is all the sort of stuff that the environment agencies and people just do not understand it. So, this is a great forum for allowing me to speak about that. But yeah, I'm trying to drive investment in the fishery there, and also making sure that, if there's some development that goes on there, they don't forget that anglers need to get access to the river. So, love Factory Bank, but it is a bit tricky at times, isn't it, Alex?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it can be amazing how quickly the fish just disappear out there, and then next day they're back again. But but Ramsey, match organiser, he does a lot for Ramsey. Keith Raymond done. He's a smashing guy. He's drawn the favoured peg 1, and he's had over 600 fish, which is some going in 5 hours for £18.8. So they're a small stamp, but hats off to him. He's really done well there to catch 600 fish. So that was first place. And then Dave Norville, he was a bit further down. I think he was on peg 8 or 9, which is probably just near the bush, sort of near the entrance where the crash barriers are, for people that know that. He's had 16 threes, had a few on the end, a little bit bigger stamp. And then third was Michael Lloyd with 13.4, and he's had the resident bream, I think, the one that always gets caught down there. And it is 13.4. It's amazing how some fish seem to show up quite regularly, isn't it? And they don't really seem to move. But yeah, so that was the Ramsey match. I mean, next Sunday they're on the Narrows, which is an open match, so anyone can fish that. And they draw at 8:15 on the Narrows Bridge and fish 10 till 3.
You can get up in there, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, this time of year, I know they had some decent weights last weekend, and be getting that time of year where then ruds start feeding and the tents sort of have a bunch as well. So, I mean, you get some impressive potentials down there, don't they? Really do.
They do. Huge weight, yeah.
Yeah, especially where the sort of bent tree is sort of about 5 or 6 pegs down from the bridge. That seems to be a bit of a hot spot for those tents. It's amazing as a venue, though. I can remember only 4 or 5 years ago, the 40 foot there was probably about 6, 8 foot deep down the middle, and it was sort of a top 3.5 on your pole. And now it's so shallow down the middle. It's amazing how quickly the venue's still up, isn't it?
So I haven't fished there for years, but I would definitely be going over the top 4. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, surprising how quickly they do still up. Is that something that the Environment Agency have a say on, or is that down to the drain, each individual drain board?
So the mid-level commissioners, they manage the whole of the mid-level system. So they're a drainage board that basically manage all of the Fenland drains throughout that system, and then there's lots of smaller drain systems as well. Obviously, they have to keep the drains free to move water to help drain the fens. Also, they've got navigation obligations as well, so they need to allow both to go through. But ultimately, if you think about it, those drains are taking Fenland water off the field, which are all full of sediment, and then they don't really flow for very often. So quite often, they're much wider and deeper than they need to be. So that's just a natural thing. All rivers that are too wide and too deep end up shallowing up. That's just a natural thing that rivers try to achieve. So it's just an ongoing process for those sort of man-made waters.
Yeah, great. Right. So then, obviously, moving to the north level now, which is the Tidgoat Angling Club. They had their regular Sunday club match at Main Road. Seems to be their favourite place at the minute. I mean, years ago they used to sort of chase the fish down the drain as they moved to the narrower part, but they seem to sort of hold up more near the Main Road bridge there. And Austin legend Don Green, the original squat man, he won it with £20.14. Lots of small fish, and he had a bonus tension that as well, which is a very good weight. And then second runner-up was Dave Simmons. I think you know Dave, don't you? He's another character. He had a £11.8. He's an angler that's really improved on his fishing this year, and he puts a lot of effort in. So it's good to see him doing well. And then third was his good mate Pete Emery with £9.10. It's interesting. I think he was sort of 6 or 7 pegs down from the bridge, but he was waiting 2 hours to catch, but still put £9.10. And often you find when the fish do move, the ones that move first are the bigger fish. And so another sort of question I've got for you, obviously with us at Bennett this week, in sort of Ackney Toll end, sort of up that end, you often don't catch for a couple of hours, and some people say, oh, the fish have moved down, and some people say, no, the fish are there. I mean, what's your sort of view on that? I mean,
so we've got this brilliant underwater camera system. It's acoustic, so we can see through anything. It's the same sort of thing you'd use for looking at a pregnant mother, for example, and the baby. So it can look through anything. So it doesn't matter how coloured the water is. And I've always wanted to put it 10 yards away or 10 pegs away from a bridge. Benwick is a great example. And just see if the fish turn up or they start feeding. My gut feeling is that there's a bit of both. They get to a time of the day when they want to feed, and also gets to the time of the day when they want to move. But, the amount of times that it's a big thing on the fens, isn't it? Where you could sit there, bite for 4 hours and weigh in £8 in an hour. And I think people find that really strange, don't they, Alex, when they come to the fens and they're sitting there catching nothing and they want to go home. And all the local lads are just ready, waiting for the fish to start topping near to them and then start lashing the bait. Yeah, my gut feeling is a bit of both, Alex. They're moving, but they're also triggered into feeding. But I'd love to prove it. Well, we'll do. In the next couple of years, we'll definitely do that. But it's sort of a bit of a...
match, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd love to have one in my peg. I wouldn't mind. I think it'd be brilliant. But you need to sort of do it in match conditions. Because I think that also impacts what's happening in that snow. But I've seen it on the Cam, all of the Fenland drains, anywhere really where those fish shoal up. Burnhouse Bridge, Cockbank would be another good place.
20 feet is another one. That's a prime example of fish moving.
Yeah, I mean, we've put cameras on marina mouths, and we've seen them moving in and out of those overnight. Our colleagues have done a lot of tracking work on the boards, and they've seen roach moving into the boards out of the river systems at night, and the bream doing the opposite. But, all sorts of different things happen with fish. But, at the end of the day, they move, and I don't think as anglers we appreciate how much they do move and how often.
Yeah, it's frightening, isn't it, really? What goes under the water.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I've got, really, on the match results. But one question I was asking you, on Facebook, you're starting to see more and more pictures of crabs that have been caught out of the local rivers and stuff like that. I was wondering if you could sort of give us any information about that. Some people saying, it must be salt water and all these things like that. So I wonder if you could sort of give us a bit more information about the mitten crab.
Yeah, so they're Chinese mitten crab, and I saw the first one of those at Well Creek, which is right down sort of near the tidal river at Salters Lode.
Yeah.
So they're mitten crab, the Chinese mitten crab, that you can spot them because basically their name describes what they look like. They've got like a furry mitten just before their claws on each hand, and they can grow quite big, up to sort of a dinner plate size. So they came in from China. They're an invasive species. We've got loads of them, and not as many as France, but we caught in France. But essentially, there's not much we can do with them. They burrow into the bank, and essentially, they came over in ballast water in ships. And what they do is they live in fresh water, so they march up fresh water. So the furthest away we've seen them, probably about, so we've got them at Erith, near St Ives, so that's probably about the furthest upstream they'll go. And they'll do that for 2 or 3 years, and then what they'll do is they'll march back to sea to breed. So if you imagine, they're clambering around, walking around, and they can travel all that distance, but then they have this urge then to go back to sea to spawn. So, amazing, actually, crab, but they are aggressive. We've got a lot of signal crayfish in this area, and when I first saw one of those, they look unbelievable. But a mitten crab will literally have a signal crayfish for dinner. Their claws are savage. They cut through nets and everything. So just watch yourselves. Anyone catches a Chinese mitten crab. But yeah, they're basically within 20 miles of the tidal river. That's where we find.
Yeah, I mean, there's been sort of rumours of people catching them even out of Marshtown Centre,
Places
like that.
Yeah. Me, Alex?
Yeah. I mean, it's another sort of invasive species that a lot of anglers probably wouldn't even know that they're there, are they? It's strange, isn't it, when you sit there fishing and you think, what have we got on here? Your floats start juggling away. You think, this stuff's not right here. But, brilliant. But that's about it covered, really, on that side of things. Obviously, we've got our Winter League practice open at Benwick this week, which I know you hot rod boys look forward to. So if you want to fish that as an open, anglers can do, can't they? I think there's enough pegs.
There should be.
Yeah, contact Stan J or Stan at Stan J Tackle. And that's about it, really. Oh, and obviously the big open this week is the March Open. So anyone that's not associated with the East Midlands Winter League can put themselves in with Bob Fitzjohn and have a crack at trying to win £60.
Good luck to them.
Yeah, good luck.
A great angle on a great peg. I can't see that being Alex.
No, that's frightening weight. So that's about it with the match results, Andy. I don't know if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, well, I was just actually thinking that maybe I saw today we got shared by different angling clubs in the area that we haven't mentioned, and I'm thinking that if these angling clubs could get in touch with us, we're more than happy to publicise everyone's match results. It sounds a bit like we're a bit of a closed shop with just Tid, Ramsey and the March Opens. It's not at all. I think if other angling clubs want to get in touch with us via Facebook or Instagram and look at our pages and just send us messages, we are more than happy to open this right up across the region. But obviously, Alex does this side of things. He's got limited time, and you guys need to get in touch with Alex, and we're more than happy to plug anything. But I think at the minute we're 3 episodes in, and it sounds like we're a closed shop. So I think if everyone realises, we are here just to basically spread the word, for the whole of Fenland, really, and East Anglia. If people want to get in touch with us a bit further away, more than happy. And
little port club matches. There's plenty of clubs about that do have regular matches.
Because we're just trying to increase. Yeah, we just want to increase fishing across the board, don't we? And it's like having Kye on.
We just want everyone to appreciate how good we sort of have the fishing around here, and it's not just one venue. There is other venues for anglers to have a go at, really.
Yeah, but it's not just that. We just love fishing, and we could talk about it all night. I mean, I'm looking at the time we've spent on this podcast. I know, but Kye, I'm just sitting here thinking, 20 minutes ago, I was thinking I should cut you guys off, but I thought, no, it is so interesting talking to you. We could do this all night. So what I'm going to say is, can we have you back on? That's the first thing.
Yeah, of course, that would be brilliant. And I guess it might make sense to have a bit of a theme, and go into more detail about something that people want to hear about, really. I'll be more than happy to do that.
Well, just the invasive species alone would take an hour, wouldn't it? I mean, we could talk about so much with that. So I think that's a really good, it's a really good idea, because your knowledge and your enthusiasm is absolutely it's phenomenal. I mean, thank you so much for your time tonight. We have gone on over perhaps the time limit we set originally for this, but I think we make no excuses. Everything you've talked about has been so fascinating, and I've sat here quiet most of the time thinking, wow, I could ask so many questions, but this is going to last. It's going to last hours if I do that. So I just did what I don't normally do, and I shut up. So yeah, if we could get you back on the new year, and if guys out there could just ping messages to us, or go and see Alex at the tackle shop at Piddly and drop us a line, and we'll take note of questions for Kye. And obviously we keep in touch with the guys we have on here anyway, and obviously we could have this kind of a theme going throughout the year, because that'd be really good. And the amount of good work the Environment Agency does, I think, gets unnoticed as well. So I think we definitely have to have you back on, so we get the message out.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you.
Well, I'm being completely honest with you. It's fascinating to listen to everything that you guys do. So I think it's only fair that we all try and pull together, and we get the whole community behind what everyone's trying to do.
It'd be good to see the results from the survey, wouldn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we can do that. I mean, we're really proud of what we do, and we just want to share that. It's a bit demoralising sometimes when people give us a bit of bad press and they don't really even take the time to understand what we do. But what we have realised is people are just hungry for information, and I think as an organisation we've not been really very good at explaining what we do very well. So this Facebook page is a really good opportunity, and again, it's at oozefishea. But yeah, I love talking on this. It's really nice to get the invite, and really nice to speak to you too. And if people have found it interesting, then yeah, we'll be more than happy to talk about more of the work we do.
Well, that's the second thing as well. I mean, I really do want feedback from people out there about the podcast. I mean, in my head, criticism is not bad. We need to know how to structure the podcast. We just keep rambling on each week, and we enjoy doing it. We can spend hours talking about fishing, but if people we need feedback from people about the guests we have on, how we're structuring the show, and we'll try and bring things in that people want. So, Alex, is there anything else you would like to add this week?
No, not really, mate. I think we've covered most bases there, and thank you very much, Kye, for your time and that. And no, it's been brilliant.
Not a problem. Keep up the good work, and ultimately, after speaking all night, we are all on the same page here, aren't we? We're just trying to improve the fens and get more people into fishing, so that the more we help each other, the better. So yeah, carry on the good work, lads. It's really good.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. So Alex, has been a pleasure as always. Kye, absolutely brilliant. Thank you for your time. This is myself just saying to all the listeners out there, a bit of an apology this week. I don't know if you guys could hear it, but through my headphones, I think we've got a really bad phone connection. So I shall try and smooth that out with the editing. But that's it for this week. Thank you for everyone for listening. This has been Tales from the Tackle Shop, a Fenelon Fishing TV production.